All right. So here we go, Lee. I think I might have mentioned to you, Lee, that I'm going on a road trip. I'm leaving New York. How are you tonight, Lee?
I'm good. I'm not leaving South Dakota. Hang on.
Okay. Well, I
That's not
haven't
my
actually officially started the road trip yet, but I'm not in the usual studio, and I wanted to have digital audio even when I'm on the road. So I've made a number of changes to the regular setup. And as you know, Lee, you change one little tiny thing,
Yes.
and the whole thing goes. Now,
Yes.
just hours ago, President Trump delivered his farewell speech. Really, that's the first time he's basically acknowledged that he's not going to be president anymore. What do we have to say to those that are still trusting the plan?
You see, I don't think it's the first time he said it, actually. I mean, he made it clear that there was going to be a transition, for instance, after the riot. And I don't know. Anybody who's not clear on what's going on, or who thinks that there's still some Biden's going to take office and then no, Joe Biden is going to be the president.
Yeah.
If God forbid something happens to him, then Kamala Harris is going to be president. If you think that's better, okay. And and his policies are going to be instituted by Thursday. We'll see stuff. For instance, Trump easing travel restrictions from Europe, not even taking a side on it, but Joe Biden said, nope, not going to do that. Yeah. And so it's over, The Trump administration is over. And so, but it's been obvious, again, I've been saying this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then if people want to talk about the election and was it fair, it's over. So I don't know.
I think you get declared a terrorist if you question whether it was fair or not. You're not allowed to debate. You're not allowed to question opinions or, present countermanding facts. None of that's allowed anymore, Lee.
Well, I will say this. It is allowed.
No, not on YouTube, not on Twitter.
Yeah, but I think, no, I think it depends how you question it. I really do. I think that a lot of people got suckered into an information operation where they don't see how they were created to play their own part. And so, that's what's happened. And people don't seem to get that when you're doing a information operation, you need to have both sides. You need people on both sides to go for it. And so, to me, here's where I think people should start looking, and no one's looking at this. And that's why, what's the title? Because we talked about the title yesterday. What'd you end up going with, Jason?
We are calling today's episode, Has President Trump Been Betrayed by Pompeo and Mnuchin? And just by naming it that, YouTube has decided to tell people that the Electoral College has confirmed Joe Biden as president-elect. I wonder if we even mention Trump after tomorrow, and YouTube will remind you that Joe Biden is president.
Yeah, because I just said he's going to be president. But I think where people who are Trump supporters need to start looking, and there's a reason they're not looking at it, is who betrayed Trump. And it's not Pence. It's much higher than that. By higher than that, I mean Mike Pence not affirming the Electoral College has nothing to do with it. There's been an information operation, and as we'll talk about in the deep dive segment, we can get into it now. Mnuchin and Pompeo. Let me ask you this: was there Russian election interference on behalf of President Trump in 2020?
I haven't seen any evidence that there was.
Well, do you know who thinks there was?
Hillary Clinton and everybody who's a Democrat?
Mike Pompeo and Steve Mnuchin. I'll say it again. Mike Pompeo and Steve Mnuchin, this is not hard to figure out, are very clear that there was election interference on behalf of Donald Trump in the 2020 election by Russia. There is not, and in fact, here's what's interesting about it. So that's the premise, and you can see it in these sanctions, including the sanctions against Andrei Telezenko.
Right.
But if you read, let's do this now. But I want to put a little bookmark in here. Before we do this, what we're going to read, Jason, just find one of the press releases about the sanctions that were put out about 8 days ago. Okay.
How do you spell Andrei's last name?
It's a Teliz, Telizech. But if you look up, and find the official Treasury or State Department press release on it. Now, before we read this, I want you to think about this, because there's a way to really think about this next level. Jason's about to read a press release from the Trump administration that is claiming that there was 2020 election interference by the Russians on behalf of Joe Biden.
Right.
It's not going to say that in those exact words, but that's exactly what it's saying. Now, but think about this, Jason. Why aren't the Democrats crowing about this? If the Trump administration is saying this, why aren't the Democrats going, aha, see, we were right the whole time. Russia's intervened. And they're not. You're not hearing the Democrats, except for Ron Wyden, crow about this. Okay? So
why is that?
Because there wasn't. It's because it's all BS. And they don't want
But that doesn't stop them.
No, but here's why. They don't want to call Republicans' attention, because if Republicans knew what we're about to prove to them beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Mnuchin and Pompeo intervened in the election, because it didn't just start here, it started back in September, by claiming falsely that there was Russian intervention in the 2020 election on behalf of Trump. They're going exactly along with the narrative. If people reported that, then every Trump supporter in the world would have been like, wait, what? Mnuchin, and they would have called, and I'll tell you who really doesn't know it, I'm convinced, Trump. I don't know what Trump knows, but I'm convinced he doesn't know this. And so what the operation, and again, we'll talk about this deeper, where Republicans need to start asking themselves is, the people who were betraying Trump are Rudy Giuliani, Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell, Ali, his connected network, which is Bannon, Cernovich, Posobiec,
Wouldn't
Chuck
this
Johnson.
include Flynn if it includes
Flynn,
Sidney Powell?
absolutely.
Patrick Byrne?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know how high up he goes, because I don't follow Patrick Byrne too much. But yeah, seems it, because I don't know who's doing it. But let's do this first. And if I'm lying, I'm dying. This is the Trump administration sanctioning people for Russian interference in the 2020 election. Hang on.
Yeah, well, let me read a little bit of it here. In this remote setup, unfortunately, you can't see the screen share, but this is from just a week ago, a little more than a week ago, January 10th, I think, something like that, January 11th. Today,
Yep.
The U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control took additional action against 7 individuals and 4 entities that are part of a Russia-linked foreign influence network associated with Andrei Derkach. Russian agent Derkach was designated on September 10th, 2020, pursuant to Executive Order 13848 for his...
But so let me just stop you there. So they're claiming, right? Feel free to disagree, that Derkach is a Russian agent and he was interfering in the election, correct?
That seems to be the case. Yep.
What did Derkach do?
Well, I don't know.
We'll come back to it. Since he's interfering in the election, what did he do? We'll come back to that. But just so far, this is the Trump administration saying this Russian agent interfered in the election. Okay, keep going.
Okay. So Russian disinformation campaigns targeting American citizens are a threat to our democracy, said Secretary Stephen T. Mnuchin. The United States will continue to aggressively defend the integrity of our election systems and processes. And then it gives us a new heading here where it says the Treasury targets Derkach inner circle. Since at least 2019, Derkach and his associates have leveraged U.S. media, U.S.-based social media platforms, and influential U.S. persons to spread misleading and unsubstantiated allegations that current and former U.S. officials engaged in corruption, money laundering, and unlawful political influence in Ukraine. Former Ukrainian.
So wait a second. Let's stop you there.
Mentions Andre here.
What's that? Okay,
it goes
so
on to mention
before we get to
Andre
that,
right here.
read that last little phrase there. That targeted who?
It says, since 2019, this Derkach and his associates leveraged U.S. media, social media, and influential persons to spread misleading and unsubstantiated allegations that current and former U.S. officials engaged in corruption, money laundering, and unlawful political influence in Ukraine.
Who are the officials?
Well, it's going to be Joe Biden.
Right. But they don't say Joe Biden. You notice that?
Right.
They don't say Joe Biden. Why don't they say Joe Biden? Because if they say, and so first off, they say it's misleading and deceptive is what they say, or whatever, deceptive, I think.
Yeah. They say that they were misleading and unsubstantiated.
Right, so it's unsubstantiated. So the Trump administration, the head of the Treasury Department, and by the way, the State Department released almost exactly the same press release, slightly reworded, but almost the same. Okay, so they're saying that the allegations about Joe Biden being corrupt. Now, just open up a new tab for a second, because let's make it clear what they're talking about. So just type in Derkach, Biden, Poroshenko call. And now let's see what is the unsubstantiated information that they released accusing Joe Biden. And don't forget, they're saying this was election interference. So it's election interference against Joe Biden that the Treasury Department is saying is false and misleading. And what did Derkach do?
I don't know. It says Ukrainian lawmaker releases leaked phone calls of Biden. Oh yeah, Andre Derkach, former member. This is from the Washington Post.
That's exactly right. So what he did was he released phone calls of Biden and Poroshenko that nobody is denying are Biden and Poroshenko. Nobody. They imply it there, but he released actual audio of Biden and Poroshenko talking. So he is being sanctioned for releasing audio that proves there was a quid pro quo between Biden and Poroshenko. You follow me?
Yeah.
And
he's
but they're
an independent member of Ukraine's parliament who previously aligned with a pro-Russian faction, according to the Washington Post.
Okay, and let's handle that for a second. The information he's releasing, and I've made this analogy before, but here's an analogy for you. Let's say I am charged with a crime, burglary, okay? And I told you about my burglary plans, okay? And you're another criminal who I've worked with before. And I said, hey, I'm going to rob this bank. Here's the blah, blah, blah. Oh, look, here's the money. I got the money, right? And now you report it to the police. Maybe to make a plea deal or whatever reason. They don't throw out the information because you're a disreputable character. If you have video of me saying this, if
Right.
they obtained it legally, like you called them and said, I want to give you this video, right? It doesn't make any difference. So the question is, whatever the source, let's say Durkash got a call from Vladimir Putin to release this. Because I want you, there's literally a directly analogous situation here, which is WikiLeaks. The WikiLeaks material, however it was obtained, is real. And no one denies that it's real. So they know it's real, but they ignore it because they say, well, yeah, it was obtained through a hack or whatever. But actually, that's not important to the truth or falsity. Does that make sense? It's not important. So what they're doing is they're trying to discredit honest information. This is Biden. This is Poroshenko. They wasn't little clips. There were long segments of the phone call. How are they obtained? I don't know. Also,
sounds like he's in the room based on the quality of the call and the recording.
Or it could have been maybe Russia tapped the phone line. Maybe a political opponent tapped the phone line. Maybe Poroshenko records all his phone calls and the White House records all their phone calls and somebody inside, does that make sense? Grabbed it. Maybe someone planted a bug. Maybe it was Israel. Maybe it was Russia. Maybe it was the Chinese. Maybe it was a guy from Alabama. I don't know. But what I'm saying is any of those scenarios may be a crime. They may be a crime. I don't know. They should prosecute that if it's a crime. But the material itself is not being denied by anybody.
Right.
And Mnuchin and Pompeo know this. There's no way they could miss this. And this is why they're not saying Joe Biden. This is why they're saying U.S. elected officials. And this is why they're starting it by going, we must protect U.S. election integrity by not allowing the Russians to, well, whatever. Then if you got evidence, then prosecute somebody. But they don't have evidence. They actually don't have any evidence. And what they're doing is they're shifting the people. So what I'm saying is people need to understand when I say the enemy's higher up than Pence, it has nothing to do with the electors. This material, maybe Pence is involved in this, but it's Mnuchin's name there. It's Pompeo's name there. And nobody, literally nobody, Jason, is reporting this. But keep going with the press release, and let's see what else we find in there.
Sure. Well, former Ukrainian government officials Konstantin Kulyuk, Alexander Onyeshenko, Andrei Teleshenko, and current Ukraine member of parliament Alexander Dubinsky have publicly appeared or affiliated themselves with Durkash. He was in the parliament of Ukraine, so it's not that...
Yeah, and by the way, Andrei doesn't like Durkash. I mean, Andrei, period. Right. And they haven't. Now, so keep going. So they've affiliated themselves. And by the way, remember in that last paragraph, they said they've used influential people? Remember they said that?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Probably Giuliani. It's
Giuliani. It's 100% it's Giuliani. Because Giuliani interviewed Durkash. Now, Andrei's told me he did not introduce Durkash to Giuliani as is claimed. But let me point out that even if he did, I don't care. It doesn't make any but I believe Andrei. But why does it matter? The story that they're burying is that Joe Biden, in fact, did a quid pro quo with Poroshenko, right? So keep going. Don't even worry about the Ukraine. Just stumble over.
Also, it's a really bad quid pro quo because what they allege that Trump was trying to get a favor, he was actually trying to investigate this crime. Joe was trying to get them to allow him to do this crime. So it's a big difference.
And by the way, I have been saying this since this story first broke because I've been talking about Ukraine for about 3-4 years now.
Right. Okay, so the thing goes on to tell us here. And we've got just about 5 minutes until we're going to continue on our sponsor exclusive segment on patreon.com/Stranahan and patreon.com and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. But this press release goes on to tell us that they've publicly affiliated themselves with Durkash through the coordinated dissemination and promotion of fraudulent and unsubstantiated allegations involving a U.S. political candidate. I mean, this is like a press release written by a 5-year-old trying to.
Except it's a really smart, deceptive 5-year-old, because they are saying, basically, they're going around the words. They don't want to say Joe Biden. You notice they don't mention Biden. I don't think he mentioned Biden's name once in this press release. No. You do a search, they don't. But it's 100% clear who they mean.
Yeah. No,
and the only people they're hiding it from, by the way, are the right. And the reason I say that, Jason, is because if you were to pull up Durkash sanctions and find a story in the New York Times or the Washington Post or a center-left mainstream media organization, do you know what they'll tell you? It's about Joe Biden. They'll tell you what it's about.
Well, so why all this intrigue? I mean, it's sort of pretty obvious, and also anybody who is going to do anything about this is like no longer president, or, I mean, we're all going to be super minimized in about a day, I think.
But I want you to see, this happened back in September, Jason.
Yeah.
You're right. This happened. The Durkash sanctions happened well ahead of the election. Now, I want you to imagine an alternate universe where Mike Pompeo and Steve Mnuchin were not working for Joe Biden and the establishment, because that's who they really work for. It's upstream of Biden. It's the establishment. They would have said, we're going to the State Department would have said, we need to investigate Joe Biden. He obviously went after a quid pro quo. This audio, which may be from a disreputable source, but it shows, you see what I'm saying? The State Department would have investigated this. They didn't. The Treasury Department would have investigated this. And no right-wing source. If you read the Daily Caller, they do the same little trick here. Chuck Ross over at the Daily Caller does the same trick the State Department is doing. And, by the way, the Senate subcommittee did it, too. I know we only got a few minutes. Let me just mention one thing. Sure. Just because it's probably the last. I'll just mention a quick citizen journalism school pitch thing. As I mentioned last week, we got a limited number of slots. I had one person a day who I'm talking to people. Well, I'm not taking people who I don't talk to first. And we're doing a discount that's not going to be repeated. And if anyone's interested, they can email me, stranahan@gmail.com. I've talked about it before.
I've been having problems reaching you on email. Make sure the email's working.
My last name, Stranahan@gmail.
Yeah, it's been bouncing. Maybe.
From you?
Maybe I did something wrong. I'll have to check.
Yeah, I'll send you check to see. But anyway, if anyone's interested in that, it looks like one slot open, so.
Great, and you can still get a drone, right?
Yes, a drone or save money.
Yeah, so that's important for people to check out citizenjournalismschool.com. So, all right, we're going to make the transition here over to our sponsor exclusive segment. People are going to be able to watch the deep dive, the high dive here on patreon.com/Stranahan or patreon.com and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Give me some feedback in the comments. How's the sound here? This is a new setup to try to get digital audio on remote setups, and it took a lot of doing. It might not be perfectly dialed in yet, but Lee will be back in just 5 minutes on Subscribestar and Patreon. We'll see everybody there.
Okay, thanks.